Matt Ward is a singer-songwriter from South Australia who released the album If I Was in Dallas Tonight in 2021, and there were several singles released from that album. He now has a brand new song, Nobody Told Me, recorded with his band, The Rising Suns, and we're going to talk about it. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Sophie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And before I started recording, you mentioned that your dog is in the vicinity, which is always a great thing.
Absolutely.
Dog on a video. And I will ask you a question about your dog later. But first, I'm going to say to you, after you released If I Was in Dallas Tonight, you took a break and you went to Tasmania, where your producer Matt Fell is based. And it sounds like you went there not to make music so much as to have a chat about music. So that suggests to me that you see Matt as a true collaborator.
Yeah, absolutely. And a friend as well. So, yeah, the 6 months I sort of had off was not necessarily planned. It was post Tamworth being cancelled, and I had some gigs off the back of the album that were lined up that were cancelled. And I found myself not doing much music at all, to be honest. And whether that was deliberate or not, I'm not sure. And then in July of that year, I needed a break. And I decided to head down to Tassie. And Matt and Amber, who's down there as well on the property, both friends of mine, and they had moved down there about 6 months earlier, and I really wanted to see the property and start writing again. And I had some support and influences here in Adelaide who encouraged me to start writing again, basically. And interestingly, as songwriters, you have a number of songs which you draw from, and you always have a catalogue of songs. And sorry, I just need to turn my messages off. That noise. So I started writing whilst I was down there, and yeah, absolutely talking about music with Matt, and also with Amber as well, but also getting out in nature. And I took my dog down there, and it was an incredibly important time for me. So just to focus and start writing, and Matt was touring at the time, so maybe it was something about lying on the floor of his studio which had me inspired. So I started writing. I got back to Adelaide, and I rejigged my studio here and my writing space in Adelaide, and wrote fairly constantly between July and January, and had a bunch of new material.
So how long have you known Matt? And when did you, I'm guessing that you met because he worked on some music with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my first album, Heartland, in 2019 was produced by Matt. And I had only recorded here in Adelaide previously. I hadn't recorded with a proper producer. And I had friends and musicians here at the time who encouraged me to make contact, and Matt was incredibly supportive. And I think Matt certainly listens for authenticity in music and in people. And we gelled that way. And Matt is incredibly proficient in taking ideas and turning them into wonderful songs as well. But I write all my own material, and it's really conversations around instrumentation and bring them to life, and he brings some of his skills most definitely to that process as well.
So you said after that trip you got back to writing. It sounds like prior to you having that break, you hadn't had a break from writing. Like writing was something you were doing fairly constantly.
Yes, writing and playing and administration and releasing albums and social media and everything. So I think this was a break that was focused primarily on writing. Mm-hmm. And even the back half of last year, I didn't play too often. And, I have a day job, and then in my spare time and come weekends, it was I was in that mindset of I couldn't wait to write, which was really interesting because, I had written for a long time, but I think it had maybe even not necessarily suffered, but it became a bit of a process to punch out albums. And the last six months has been just focusing on writing for writing's sake. And I think the quality of what I will be releasing in writing will have jumped significantly forward, and I'm looking forward to that.
So you mentioned that you write all your own material, as in you don't have a co-writer. Do you think that can put pressure on you though as well, when there's not someone else there to either prod you or act as a sounding board?
Not so much pressure. I think I think co-writing definitely brings different things to the table. So I think co-writing is an incredibly productive process. I think some people co-write, they need co-writing, and some people do it to progress their songwriting where it's currently at, even if it has a strong foundation. So I can be a little bit stubborn, and I like doing my own thing as well. So and growing, but there will be on the album, when I eventually release my next album, there will be a co-write on there, definitely.
And it sounds like you know your own nature as a songwriter. It's like you know what works best for you, and that is just writing by yourself.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's best for me. I know co-writing would bring out more in me as well. It's just the number of hours in the week and the days and various things like that. So
yeah, and it's also, I guess, what sort of stories you're wanting to tell at this point in time. I mean, it's
really good point.
And if it's the world inside you, then there's a really good chance that someone else may not be able to draw that out because they don't know what's going on.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head. Thank you. That should have been my answer right from the start with, is that I do write from quite a personal perspective. And so, and a storytelling base. And so therefore, that does work for me from the cathartic point of view from songwriting.
Yeah. And it's, art can serve many functions. One of them is catharsis. One of them is like documenting. So therefore, that brings me to the new song, Nobody Told Me. Is it catharsis? Is it documenting? Is it something else?
This one is really interesting. This one is less catharsis. It's more songwriting. For songwriting's not sake is the wrong word, but an idea and bringing an idea to fruition. So I had a guitar riff that I'd been playing with, a chord progression for at least a couple of years. Right. And I always heard at the end of every line or at the end of every refrain, somebody singing "Nobody Told Me," right. And I just like the idea. Sometimes there was a song, Tattoos, Trucks and Country Music, off my previous album, where it generated from a guitar and an idea, and it was so simple and repetitive that you think, that could actually really, really work as a really strong hook. Mm-hmm. And then I sort of imagined big guitar sounds out of that chord progression, and then a bit of a link to Neil Young and Crazy Horse, because sometimes they have that sort of studio vibe, singing a repetitive chorus in the background, and so it really it evolved musically, essentially. Then it came to writing the actual song, and I'd tried several times to write the actual song, and the line "Nobody Told Me," I was articulating to Amber Slade down in Tasmania that I'd like this song to be about, you're walking through life and you stumble across stuff that nobody can prepare you for. And she immediately said, sounds like the poem "Good Bones" by Maggie Smith. Right. And I was like, okay. And I had a look at it, and and it built from there. So and I wrote a verse, and I must confess, the last two verses, despite having done all this writing, and it's absolutely true, everything I just previously said, this song I wrote one verse. I was preparing to go into the studio in Adelaide with my Adelaide band, and the last two verses came as as we were setting up, and I said, "Sorry guys, I just need to really concentrate," and I just wrote it on my phone, but I was really happy with it as well. Yeah, it's interesting, the fact that while you were setting up, it's almost like you cleared space in your brain to make that song, and it suddenly went, okay, like I've been here for all this time, now I've got to come out. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that whole, where did that come from? Yeah. It is always a mysterious process. You mentioned hearing the instrumentation, though, when you were first thinking about the song, and I know that you have done some co-producing for this new material. Is this a role you've taken before with your music, working with Matt as a producer? Less so with Matt, but previous EPs that I've released, absolutely, I guess I've guided the instrumentation and what's required, but then also the musicians bring their own tone and their own sound and to that process. But certainly this song, I wanted it as a sort of a Neil Young type of vibe, big guitars, that repetitive hook of the line of the call and response thing, and also wanted a bit more of a live studio feel about a few of these songs to represent a bit more of my live sound with my Adelaide band. So that was my take. And then there was an engineer, John McNichol, who was in the studio, who from an engineering perspective certainly captured that vibe. And then Matt did a little bit of comping of the song to pull it together essentially.
Now, your Adelaide band is the Rising Suns, and from what I could tell, you actually hadn't recorded with them since about 2016, or is that incorrect?
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. Yeah, so I've made that decision to work with producers and session musicians to get the albums out, and yeah, that's and 2 different studios. So initially with Matt Fell, and then the one in Texas. So it's all part of my ambition and to keep evolving essentially. So yeah, and the band that I recorded with in Adelaide back in 2016 to now there's not one consistent member, so right. It's actually a different band in the end. So, but still the same name, and the current lineup I have, we've been playing together now for 3 years and really gel as musicians. So I really wanted to take them into the studio to capture that.
I guess it's, it is a practical consideration as well when you're an independent artist. If you wanted to take a band to Texas to record, that's a really expensive proposition. So it makes sense to record with musicians who are there, producers who are there, and just play live with the band.
You're really cutting to the chase and cutting through the truth here, cutting to the truth. So yeah, it's also logistically an expensive proposition to take them anywhere. So.
Well, it is, and it's part of what's fantastic about Australian country music in particular. There are a lot of independent artists who have to self-fund or crowd-fund, but it means you're making creative decisions yourself, which leads to a really varied range of music that might not be the case if it were record companies in charge of everything, I think. Absolutely. So, but the trade-off is you can't always get what you want, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, and I look at it as every release I've done is a little bit different, which is nice and evolved as well. So, but also, I'm having to make decisions now around the set of songs that I'm sitting on based on the ones that we've done here in Adelaide versus the ones that I've done with Matt. And they'll be deliberate decisions to create separate pieces of art potentially. So, yeah,
right. And so you were talking about the fact that you're songwriting from a different place when it comes to this new song, Nobody Told Me. You've also said you do tend to write from a personal place. So I'm wondering if this is a different personal place you're writing from for this new material.
Yes, it is. I think the inspiration of this song from the Maggie Smith poem, it was almost like a co-write in some ways. So there's definitely some of me in there, but I enjoyed the process of looking externally to stories or to my own catharsis to create the words around create the lyrics essentially. I think you'll probably find a lot of the other songs are more those personal stories as well. So bit of me in it, but also I just enjoy the art of the lyrics of this song and how it's been pulled together.
You mentioned that you took that break last year after Tamworth had been cancelled, some other gigs were cancelled. It is a cliche, but the roller coaster that musicians have been on over the past couple of years, has it been hard to keep faith with your art when there has been so much change and so much uncertainty about when you can actually play live again? You're recording music, who knows if you'll be able to take it to audiences again. I would imagine it has been difficult to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened the first 6 months of last year. It was faith in the art, but the entire process as well, and knowing that there's about 12 different parallel streams of work you have to do to keep your art alive, even in of itself. But then when you start writing again, you realise that it's a higher power than just all those other streams and the touring or the commercial aspects. You can never take writing away from an artist or painting or what have you, and that's the most important part of it. And I guess that's certainly been a learning for me, and I'm a little bit more patient probably right at this point in time as I go to release all my new music. And I have also, after 2 albums, probably my expectations are being managed, and that not realistic, but I realize it's a long game that you're playing in music, and the only way that you can keep sane in that is to continue to keep writing, which is why you're in it in the first place.
So do you feel as a writer that even though you are writing from a personal place, those ideas for those songs, like the last two verses for this song that just appeared, do you feel like they're sitting out there in the ether? So are you one of those creators who thinks ideas are sitting out there and you've just got to pluck them and grab hold of them when you can?
Like a lot of things, it's a balance. So I think there's definitely an aspect of that in all of this writing. But those ether things only come about through life experiences. So I think if you're sitting in one place and not trying to grow as a person or push your own boundaries, those things won't generate in the ether, is my thinking. So it's as much as a focus on, keeping the muscle alive around writing as it is around continuing to want to grow as a person or explore in life and explore. It sounds really cliche, but meanings in life essentially. So, and I think there's certain people who that will always be part of their DNA, and I think I'm one of those people for better or for worse.
Well, it's also the fact that when you're practicing your craft, you're ready to do something with those ideas when they turn up. It's all very well to say, "Oh, great, there's an idea." You do have to know how to turn it into something.
Absolutely, that's right. So, and you have a vehicle in music. So.
Yeah. Now, completely different subject. Your dog, Shooter, has his own Instagram account. Are you trying to turn him into an influencer?
I think he already is an influencer. So I certainly have some musicians in the scene and publicists who now, whenever I make contact with them, I am sure to include a photo of Shooter so that hi Beck. So that they stay on board and keep in line. So he's actually just on my feet at the moment. So
well, look, that's not good enough. The dog needs to be on camera. No, I'm joking.
Come on.
No, I was really joking. Don't disturb a dog. But why did you start doing an Instagram? Was it because so many people were asking you for photos and you thought the easy way to do this is just to make an Instagram account?
I just like photos of my dog and other dogs, and people do as well. And there's enough crap on the internet that feeding them with nice photos of very cute puppies is just a community service. So.
Yeah, I did discover an Instagram account that I think is called Good News Dog, and it's not all dog stories, but there are a lot of stories that involve dogs. I thought this is the sort of content I can get down with.
I have written a song inspired by Shooter that's part of the new collection, and it's a beautiful song. I can't wait to release it. So
fantastic. Well, for the time being, people have your new song "Nobody Told Me." It is a great song.
That's right.
I'm very excited to hear the new music as it comes through. I guess that you have a release schedule in mind, and at some point in the future.
Yeah, that's right. And so doing my stuff here with my band here in Adelaide, and so that might form up a small release, and then focus on the album after that. So it's going to be. I really look forward to releasing this music, and I've got a special project song on the go for this year as well about a local a local icon here in Adelaide. So I won't say too much, but that's going to be really fun to release that as well.
Okay, well, that's intriguing. Song about the dog, song about an icon.
Yes.
Matt, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks, Sophie.